Hello, everyone. Welcome to the American Sidebar podcast. I'm your host, Joe Fitzgerald. Along with me is
Brian Mason.
It's Friday, September 22nd, 2023. On today's podcast, we have Victoria, who is the president of the New Jersey chapter of Gays Against Groomers. Can you tell us a little bit about Gays Against Groomers, Brian?
Joe, Gays Against Groomers is a national movement with chapters in 13 states. They started in response to the pushing of what they felt was an inappropriate agenda that was being pushed on children in their name as gays and lesbians. As their movement grows, so does the backlash and the controversy surrounding these issues. You can find Victoria at By Mama Bear on Instagram and Twitter, or X as it's now known, at gag_New Jersey. And Victoria at gaysagainstgroomers.com. You can email her if you want to contact her and get more information. Or look up their website at...
Their website is gaysagainstgroomers.com. Stand by for the show.
Who bringing the noise? Go baby, we bringing our toys. Separate men from the boys. Chopper be singing, she'll be on the voice. Bang, bang, we gon' ride out. Gang, gang, we don't die out. Want it like this, ain't no time out.
You go by, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're making Joe very nervous today.
I told you it's because I'm sitting in the preferred seat.
I think
It probably is.
If people listening don't know, there was a seating change, and Brian was thrown out of his seat.
Brian makes weird faces.
I was also told that I make a resting, nasty face.
RBF.
Though. I have a slight RBF.
You got to change your face when you sit on the other side.
Yeah, so it's the seat.
Yeah.
So maybe if I was sitting in that seat, I'd seem more approachable,
Probably, yeah.
and you'd be less nervous.
Yeah. Can you dye your hair gray too?
Oh, wait, I don't know. Did I just say that? Sorry, I'll watch my body mouth.
Yeah. So no, I guess the question is, right? You grew up, I think, differently than our kids now are growing up, right?
Fortunately, yes, I did.
From a sexuality standpoint, right? I think now it's more forced, right? It's like it's forced to say that you're a certain sexuality, gender, however you want to put that label, right? Mm-hmm. Back when you were growing up, it was hidden, right, for the most part. And I think that's where the phrase kind of, coming out of the closet came from, right? My question is when you were growing up, did you always know you were bi? Was it kind of a gradual thing? I'd like to understand, your whole path, right? And how you became who you are today. And did you come out to your parents? Was it a big kind of to-do? How did your parents react? Because the big thing right now, I know I'm unloading you with a lot of questions.
I'm just debating how much I'm going to tell you.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's okay.
But now I guess the biggest fear is that, parents will react a certain way. So I'm just trying to understand your path and how it came to be.
Did you always live in this area? Did you grow up in New Jersey?
I grew up in New Jersey. I moved around a bunch. I was down in Tallahassee, then I was out in New Jersey, back in California, Vegas, and Jersey again. So
It's like a military brat.
I was not military, though.
Okay.
Yeah, just a
All right.
nomad.
Not a Marine, I guess.
Not a Marine.
Okay.
Joe's a Marine.
I heard all about you being a Marine,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if any. Told anybody.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so my story. I guess mine, I don't want to say it was unconventional, but you were saying that people being gay, that it was kind of hidden. I don't feel like it was really hidden for me. My mom had gay friends. I knew of it. I had known, I knew gay couples and everything. I definitely didn't see it on television like you see it on television. Wasn't talked about in school like it's, talked about all the time in school now. But it wasn't something that I didn't know existed. I wasn't one of those kids, you talk to some people and they say I knew I was gay when I was 4 years old. Honestly, I don't even remember much when I was 4, if you want to know the God's honest truth. I couldn't even recall many memories.
I just remember the mic's travel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I guess I was tapping on the mic.
No, that's cool. I want you to be comfortable.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say probably like middle school-ish, I think, was when I kind of was, kind of had the thoughts. I didn't act on anything until high school. And again, it just kind of happened. Just, I don't know, girls being
Did you have
girls.
boyfriends, though?
I had boyfriends as well. I did not have a girlfriend in high school. That didn't happen until I was in my 20s. But I had like experimented with women in high school.
Was that more of like a confidence thing, or you just felt like it wasn't okay in society at that point? Or did you not even think about it?
Probably I didn't really think about it. Yeah, like I would say neither. I didn't date many people in high school. And just, like the two that I did happened to be men.
Yeah.
Then you get older and you meet different people. Life takes you different directions.
Yeah.
And, that's where it was. But I never felt the need to quote unquote come out. I just kind of did. And then people, if they saw it, they saw it. I never really cared. I never, my brother knew only because he saw me, he had seen me out and about. And then I know he would tell certain family members, they're like, Victoria's with women. And, I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, I never actually had like a coming out moment. It just kind of was.
Did your parents question it? Or
no, not really. And I think my mom, when I told her, when I told her in the past, she was just like, yeah, we always kind of thought that. And I was like, yeah, like it is what it is. I just never felt this need to announce it to the world. I know I've gotten, I don't want to say criticized, but on a couple of my videos I post online, people will be like, why do we care that she's bisexual? And I'm like, dude, I get your point. Like, I don't like leading, hi, I'm Victoria, I'm a bisexual woman. Like, it's just...
Yeah, but I think it's important for people to know that, especially with your
100%,
organization.
and that's why I do it.
Because for some reason, and I don't agree with it either, but for some reason, when you think of, any kind of label, any part of the LGBT, community, you always think, oh, well, they're Democrat or they're liberal or, they're not going to agree with anything a conservative says and they can't vote for Trump. And, and it's like it all has that bag, right? And I think it's the news that actually, kind of portrays that now. But I think it's important, that, it's against the grain.
It absolutely is. And like I said, unfortunately, I kind of have to introduce myself like that, at least, when I'm at these, Board of Education meetings and whatnot, due to the fact that it counteracts the narrative that we've been presented with. Like a lot of parents, anytime they speak up against what's going on in the school districts, they instantly just say, oh, you're a homophobe, you're a bigot, and it's like, guys, it's very hard for a bisexual or a gay person to be a quote unquote bigot against their own community. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, you just have to, people have to understand that you're not just some straight white Karen, as they call them, coming out bashing people.
Of course not. Yeah.
So, and then kind of what led it to, your, what's the organization called?
Gays Against Groomers.
Gays Against Groomers. And,
it's national now.
It is
it's
national. Yeah. So we
is.
just started the Jersey chapter, I don't know, the end of July. So relatively recently, but the organization has been around for about a year, a little less than a year and a half.
Do they have chapters in every state? It seems like more and more is coming up.
More and more are coming up. We do not have every state yet. That is the goal for the end of the year. I believe currently it's 13 states. Could be more over the past week. But yeah, we're growing rapidly.
Do you know what state it started in?
I believe Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
I know that's where Jamie's from, so I'm assuming it's Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking like Alabama or something.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I was like, no.
Why Alabama?
Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But Jamie is from Wisconsin, so I'm assuming it was Wisconsin.
So what exactly does the organization do, and what's their kind of mission statement?
So yes, we are an organization of gay people and others in the community that oppose the recent trend of indoctrination, medicalization.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. They're all gay, or there's some?
They're all LGBT or T.
Okay, got it.
So we have allies that support our cause, but you cannot be a member unless, and this is for everyone to know as well, because we get a lot of applications from straight people.
Yeah.
And we love you guys. We love the support.
We can't join the club totally.
You can't be in our club, okay? But we do love our allies, and they.
Well, if Brian, you can try the other side, and and then you can join,
if you're in the closet, you're ready to come out.
Do you have to have proof?
I'm not recording a video. If that's where you're going,
Joe. We do vet
Joe.
people, so
right. You do vet
you
people.
might have to be vetted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're
Have
ready
see
to
what
come
the
out,
wife,
when you're ready,
I don't know if the wife's comfortable with that.
Polaroids.
Yeah.
We're gonna have Polaroids.
If you can find the Polaroid camera today, all right, we got a deal.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Do I get to stay in the same scene? No.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do. Please.
This might be the only way I can get back into my seat.
So, okay. So I think we derailed a little bit, but so you do have to be some kind of letter to
Yes.
be okay. And then what exactly is the mission statement?
As I was saying earlier, yes. So we oppose the recent trend of indoctrination, medicalization, and sexualization of children under the guise of LGBTQIA plus all the other letters that they are adding as we speak. There's probably another letter or two added on. But we understand that people have different ways of life. Everyone lives their life differently. And grown adults, you're free to do whatever the hell you want with your body. Okay, that is not for any of us to judge. But we want the kids left alone. Like, just do not involve children. Do not be forcing your beliefs on kids. God forbid, do not be mutilating the bodies of children or putting them on hormone blockers and possibly sterilizing them as adults. Just let kids be kids, and that is our primary goal.
Got it. What particular, what makes you think, right, that they are over-sexualizing kids and mutilating and then mutilating? What in particular, right? Because I think
let's see. What is it in New Jersey? The 5th graders, they have to learn about anal sex, blowjobs, masturbation. I've seen books that they've had in school libraries talking about butt plugs and massaging your butthole. Verbatim.
It's not just anatomy.
Yeah.
No. They literally. What was it? It was oh God, it was horrifying. It was like everyone has a butthole, and they have the picture of the hairy balls and like the star is the butt. It was like horrifying, and a bunch of butt plugs underneath. And I was just like, why? Is this around?
I may need a refill.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's bad. And the book Gender Queer and the cartoon blowjobs with children. Like, why is this in our school libraries? I mean, if you want to...
Didn't the author of Gender Queer just come out and say this isn't for children?
Yes.
It's been pushed as this is something that kids should be reading, but now the author said...
Yeah, what are they saying? The narrative is that trans kids are going to kill themselves if they don't have access to this book with cartoon blowjobs, that they're going to be so upset and devastated that they're going to go home and, end their lives because they can't get the blowjobs.
So I'm
the cartoon blowjobs.
Yeah. That we're all, this is from a book. This is not your own view.
This is yeah. Please don't edit that creatively. Okay. Oh God.
He's going to put a picture with I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Oh, please don't.
So when I was growing up, what we learned about sexuality was more, when we were going through puberty and, certain things would happen to our body, right? Reproductive system, things like that, right? It was very
biology functioning.
Scientific. Backing of it.
Now it's more sexual. Like you said, why are we discussing anal sex? Why are we discussing blowjobs? Like, it's just... And then we're going a little side. I mean, just recently you're talking about, again, 5th grade, they're doing the IVF, which, again, nothing wrong with IVF. IVF's a great thing. But, do they really need to be learning about it in 5th grade? They're throwing a lot at these kids, far more than they need to know. I believe in 2nd grade now they want you to be able to, to pick out 5 parts of, female anatomy, below the waist. It's too much. Like, in 2nd grade, they still believe, a lot of these kids still believe in Santa Claus. They go visit the Easter Bunny at the mall. They don't need to know where their neighbor's clit is. Just wait a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I, personally, I think, it should be pushed to, if they are going to teach anything like this, right? And it does get to this kind of radical portion of, showing sex in schools, right? Even if it's like a junior or senior level, right, and it's an elective or something like that, for me, I could understand that, right? Because it's, we're talking about STDs and things like that. And, hopefully if these kids are raised right, and I don't think we should just kind of kowtow to the weakest link, right? And I think that's what we're doing, right? A lot of people think that, oh, well, a lot of these kids don't grow up in this, in great homes, and they should be, taught this in schools by, their teachers or their guidance counselors or whatever. And we're trying to kowtow towards kind of our weakest link, which I agree. We need to protect those kids, and there's certain things in schools that do protect them, right? But I think there's there has to be something that helps those kids rather than teach all our kids that, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you're bi, right? And you have a child,
Yes.
right? With a man, I'm assuming, not IVF.
Contrary to common narrative, yes, it does take a woman and a child to a woman, not a woman, a child, a
Is
woman
that
and a man to have a child.
Even in 2023.
Yeah. I was with a man. Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Were you married or no? Yeah.
Really need to go down this rabbit hole? No,
Was it-
I was not.
Was it under
thankfully.
wedlock?
No, I didn't know if you were married to someone. and then
No. I dodged that bullet,
Yeah.
thankfully,
Luckily.
and single mom, and I love it.
Okay,
Yep.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you think it's harder to raise a child as a bisexual woman rather than a straight woman? I mean, are you telling them anything different? Is there any questions? Your kid's young, right? But maybe when she's older, she'll ask questions like, "Mommy,"
I mean, thus far, it just hasn't been an issue. Granted, I'm not really out there dating.
Yeah.
Very rarely, being a single mom, I don't really have the opportunity to get out there. I'd like to, but yeah, we haven't had that conversation yet. But I strongly feel that it will not be an issue. And we'll cross that bridge when we're ready to get there. I plan on telling her, that obviously I fully stand by the whole love is love movement, and I will raise my daughter knowing that, that doesn't matter who your mother fell in love with, as long as they're a good person, and we love each other, and we love you, then,
Yeah.
No, is she
good.
too young to know what's going on right now? Does she know you're out speaking?
yeah,
she's too young.
actually, she doesn't know what I'm.
They ask questions.
Yeah, she doesn't know what I'm
They
speaking.
pick
about.
up more than we realize. a lot.
Yeah. She knows the Gays Against Groomers logo. So, and I'll be out at a restaurant, and I live in a very, very, very woke town. And she'll be telling the waiter, she's like, "My mom's with Gays Against Groomers." I'm like, "Oh God, they're gonna spit in my food."
Yeah.
But I guess she hears some phone calls, and she sees my stuff in the logos. She's been to some Board of Education meetings with me. Generally speaking, I'll have someone there with me to pull her out. If I'm reading anything, especially like I said, some of the books that are just
Sure.
absolute filth. She does not like going to these meetings, but
No kid does.
but she's been a good sport,
Has she ever? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, has she ever been there when people started like yelling at you or anything like that?
Thankfully, no, and I won't.
Because that has happened. I know.
Yes, we've had some protests and rallies where people get really nasty. I haven't had her with anything like that
good.
because it would just I don't want her exposed to that, and God forbid someone says anything or does anything to my child. I don't need the criminal record.
Mama bear.
Yeah.
Like Joe Sweatshirt says.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the narrative I think now is that everything that you're saying, right, is not happening, right? There's no books that have blowjobs in it. There's no, there's no over sexualization, right? And if it is happening, right, in the certain areas, it's only because they're trying to build awareness for the community so they don't get bullied, right?
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts is that absolutely is happening in school. I got a very upsetting call probably about a week or two ago from a mother in South Jersey. Has a 13-year-old daughter, and I guess she's under the impression she's trans, and I guess she got involved in some LGBTQ like after school club or something of that nature, and but it's run by the school. And,
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Now,
our area.
and through that, they have told
what
her
you
that
talk
since
about.
she's 13, that she needs to start taking puberty blockers. Like, oh, you're turning 13, you got to get on puberty blockers. They directed her to where to buy binders, bind her chest. And, the mother's obviously hysterical over this because of all the horrible things that can
This
happen.
was in an after-school program?
This was in a school club.
In a school club?
In a school club.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was being pushed. Great.
Yeah. And but there is again false narrative that these puberty blockers do not harm children and that they could just pause puberty and then just grow and just be totally fine and reach their same height and have the same bone density and the same reproductive abilities, which has been established to not be the case. And it's terrifying that they're pushing this on kids because they just think that it's a pause button. And when you have, books, again, like Genderqueer, which I'll show you the video if you haven't seen it, where they're showing the period scenes, like it's, just blood overflowing coming out of the toilets. And, like it looks like a horror scene. And you can just tell a little girl, like, oh, you can pause that. You don't need to go through this. You don't need to be uncomfortable and have cramps and, the blood exploding all over the bathroom or whatever they're telling these kids this now. We'll just give you some injections and we'll put that on pause. It kind of sounds nice, but that's not what's happening. They're really hurting themselves.
Yeah, the narrative's weird, right? Because it's they think, right? There's people that, I shouldn't say they think, but there's certain people that think that if you're born with a certain gene, right? And sometimes you're born with the man gene or the girl gene or whatever it is, right? And we know it's science, it's X,
Yeah.
So they actually say that, but the thing that is disturbing to me is you would stop the hormone treatment, right? They want to do the hormone treatment, and then on the other side of this, they're saying, oh, well, they were born with the gene. It's like, why don't they just follow through with with the normal state, right? And if they want to be a woman, a man wants to be a woman, he can be a woman, right?
It's like they say genitals don't determine your gender, but in order to affirm your gender, you need to cut off the genitals. So just make it make sense.
It's kind of strange.
Yeah.
Just make it make sense. And that's my whole thing. It's like, just make it make sense, people.
And I'm,
because,
Yeah, I think it's funny because, a lot of people think that we're, especially when you hear like a conservative person talk or even a man talk about like a woman's, body parts, right? They think that, you're either kind of an alt-right or something like that, right? But for me to kind of have that conversation, I don't think anything, you know what I mean? Like I'm happy with whatever they want to be. If my son grew up and he said, I want to be a woman, okay, great. I wouldn't stop him from puberty or anything else. It would just, he would grow up, and if that's what he thought, that's what he thought, right?
Yeah.
I'm not to say that I wouldn't have him see a psychiatrist, right?
Of course.
But all the people who are pushing this, they also had the benefit of going through puberty themselves. Oh, yeah. And now they don't have any experience with, they didn't take puberty blockers when they were 7 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old.
And we don't know, right? Because you see like the horror, the totally screwed up situations, right? Where you have like that Navy SEAL, for instance.
Oh,
what's that guy's name?
Chris Beck.
Chris Beck.
Yeah, who transitioned and is transitioning back.
Yeah, so he was a Navy SEAL, male, right? Male Navy SEAL. Went through SEAL training, was a full-fledged Navy SEAL, right? And then as he was a Navy SEAL, he transitioned. Right?
No, this was after he left. So he did combat deployments and everything, and then transitioned. But there was also a big backstory with it.
Yeah.
So
he saw a psychiatrist that
was a VA psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Who said
that's also happened to be doing a book on was it transitioning?
I can't remember what the book was, but basically the psychologist.
She used him as a guinea pig.
Was using him as like a.
I'm assuming when he had all PTSD after being.
That's when he was having major issues.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's what they prey on. If you read the studies and everything, the autistic population with children, they are pushing this transgender narrative on autistic kids who just aren't necessarily comfortable in their bodies to begin with, and instead of just addressing the autism, they're putting gender dysphoria on them, just much like who you were just referring to, probably had PTSD and was having sensory issues, rather.
Well, gender dysphoria, that's what's funny about it, right? Because gender dysphoria was actually a thing. It used to be a thing.
It still is a thing, yeah.
Well, if you look at the new DSM, right, they changed it, right? It's like DSM X whatever, the one that just came out in, I think, 2023.
Okay, maybe I haven't seen the updated
There's one in March.
It was as of last year.
Oh, 100%, right? So like when we were growing up, right, they said that, it was gender dysmorphia, and it's likely in kids up until, a little past puberty, so 15, 16 years old.
I think they say 90% of it goes away after puberty.
Yep. And that was in the old DSM, right? And then in 2023, I think it was in March 2023. I could be wrong, but,
I won't fact check you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure a lot of people will fact check us when we're done here. Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, but the old DSM did say that. And I think it's funny because how does that just change? Like, what's the studies in that? Is it the uptick?
So it just doesn't exist anymore?
They're not saying it doesn't exist, but they use the words like, cisgender and things like that in the new scientific portion of it, which is kind of alarming.
I remember the first time I got called cisgender. I didn't know what it was.
Well, because it's not real. It just means you're normal.
It sounds derogatory. But
It is. I take it as derogatory.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I'll get
oh
a
my
lot
God.
of hate for this comment.
I was like,
what did I do?
I was
and
like,
they were
I feel like
that
it's-
just means you're.
It just means you're normal.
Yeah, you're normal.
You're just a dude.
I feel like it's the masculine gender, though, right? Shouldn't it be masculine gender? Because the cisgender would be what I was transitioning into, because it would be the female version of it, right? I mean,
No,
it's very confusing.
I don't. Cis,
Right?
I
can't
think
keep up
cis
with
is
it.
supposed to mean same. If I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it just means that you're.
when I was growing up, someone called you a sissy. It wasn't good.
Yeah, it was not
You
good.
know.
Yeah. Still not good. It still pisses me
Yeah,
off.
yeah. In the Marine Corps, I used to have to do sissy squats.
You were in the Marines?
Yeah.
Oh.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's first time. Yeah, I didn't let you know yet.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
This movement is, it's trying to like get. So if you were were you a tomboy? Or what were you like as a kid?
I had tomboy tendencies, a real boyish, horrible haircut in high school. If I had to stick to my high school haircut, like I might not.
Oh,
be
we
here.
have to-
I might not be here today. Do not
Vince,
look it up.
can you
It's
get
not-
a picture of that
God,
and put
it's
it up
terrible.
there?
No, don't. I do have.
But now they're saying if you're a tomboy,
You're a dude.
you're a dude, and now we're gonna, like you're saying, genital mutilation,
Yeah.
which is all right. So you're gonna go through we're gonna start with binders,
Yeah.
right? We're gonna go to surgery. Do you remember a couple of years ago when we found out about the genital mutilation in like Africa, and we were horrified?
Oh, of course.
Feminists, rightfully, going, this is horrible. I remember people coming over, immigrants here, they were told stories about what they went through, and it was horrible. Now we have a doctor doing it. Do you have to be of age to get it done, or do other parents? I know that there was some controversy going on in different states.
Yeah, it depends state to state.
And it depends, right? And I know Canada had a bunch of places where they had surgical centers, and apparently this was happening, and they might have closed them down. But
Yeah,
that used to be a
more
thing you were
opening
against.
up, but there are several states that have now made it illegal. We gotta verify what exactly New Jersey is currently. I believe they do top surgery. I'm not sure about bottom surgery for minors.
I mean, imagine like there was a girl, Chloe Cole, who came out, and she's all over the place. And she was a young girl who was a tomboy.
Yes,
Where's this from?
I don't remember what state she was in. You have to look it up.
she's also autistic.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So I don't know whether her parents were totally into it, but I think she's now 18. She had gone through the top surgery and is saying, I guess when she started realizing this wasn't her thing, she said, if I have children, I can't breastfeed them. Like I was mutilated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's being attacked.
Oh,
that-
yeah, it's
that-
being anti-trans.
She's anti-trans now. This is someone who was fully on board. I think she was on 4 medications.
Yeah.
So they were saying, like, go to your point about you're following this. She was a guy, but yet without the top surgery, without the 4 medications, she wasn't. Her voice had to be changed, and now that she's going against it, she's being. I mean, the girl might have bodyguards now. I mean, she was being viciously attacked.
Do we have an answer on what the reason it is to transition? I'm assuming it has something to do with puberty, right? I'm sure it has something to do with puberty, but what's the reasoning behind transitioning before puberty versus after? Is it an easier transition to do it before or after, or is it just?
Well, I believe. Well, as far as I guess what they first do is they socially transition, and then they do the puberty blockers, and then as far as the actual, mutilation surgeries, I believe that has to happen post
Yeah.
puberty. I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not honestly. I don't want to give any faulty info because I'm
Yeah.
opposed to all of it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, the end result is what I'm trying to say is at the end of this, why don't they just wait, right? And really, just let them go through puberty, let them really understand who they are as a person, right? And get to that point. And if they're old enough, just like everything else, right? Going to the liquor store, driving a car, getting a gun, everything you're allowed to do in this world requires you to be of age. Why are we doing it to the kids?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%, and it just shouldn't be done. I don't know. Like I said.
And why are they so vicious to groups like you guys? Like you've been personally.
They think that we hate ourselves.
You have an opinion.
We're self-hating.
You have an opinion of saying this isn't. I don't like what you're doing. They have an opinion that says yes, this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
You guys are laying out a little bit more facts, and you'd also. It seems that people in America, gay and lesbians, fought for years to be accepted. Mm-hmm. And now all these other groups just sort of added themselves.
Yeah, they hijacked our movement.
Yeah, and it's got to be hurtful to a lot of people because they did work. I mean, there was a time where it wasn't a good position.
I've heard some gay and lesbian people. They actually said that they're like, if I had any idea that this is what would have happened and this is what our movement would have turned into, they're like, I would just give up my rights to get married because it's gone so far out there. And what we're doing to children is just it's it's horrifying.
And I have older friends that are gay, and it's funny. They, when the whole thing was going on with like gay marriage and stuff like that, they were pissed off because they were like, now the guy that I'm with is going to want to get married, and I don't like.
It's like I had a good thing going here.
Yeah, he's like, we're going to all these parties and like doing all these things. He's
Welcome
like,
to misery, my friend. Kidding, honey. Kidding. Yeah. Hopefully, Krista doesn't watch it.
It's
a joke.
I'm sure she doesn't. But yeah, it's like like that's not what they signed up for in the beginning, right? It was to, that, and a lot of them it was really, really free, right? They could have sex with whoever they want and like, have whatever partners they want. And, it was their thing. They didn't have to be tied down. Right. And it was just funny to hear, right? For them to say, well, I didn't want this, Yeah. And then the other side is like, well, the younger ones coming up was like, I want this. I want to get married.
I do think that I know firsthand that a lot of us did absolutely want the right to get married. So I mean, you might have had a couple friends that, looked a little wild and maybe they, they weren't ready to settle down. But, a lot of us were. I mean,
they wanted normalcy.
I obviously never did. But
yeah, they wanted normalcy.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to be accepted.
Just to be accepted and just to have the right to just live our lives like the rest of, everyone else, which I know they throw that narrative back in our face, but it's very different.
I think it's it's funny. It's like you can't be a lot of like just whatever you're for, whatever your your deal is, right? People get mad when you're not all in on that particular thing, right? And it's like, oh, well, I also agree with some, it's like a lot of Republicans or Democrats, right? If the Democrats, you look at the Democrats now with the, the extremely woke, like liberal side of it, and the other Democrats like, Bill Maher and all the others, they're like, whoa, wait, we didn't sign up for this thing, and they're being persecuted.
They're almost being considered Republicans.
And old school liberals are almost considered right wingers right now.
Yeah.
But it's like that with everything, right? It's like, especially, with you deal with it every day, right?
Of
Just
course.
being bi woman, right? It's, you're not part of our movement then. You're not, we kicked you out of the LGBTQIA plus.
Yeah, I was never part of the QIA plus.
The plus is getting scary
Yeah.
because that video that came out of the teacher saying, stop calling them pedophiles. That's a nasty word.
Oh,
they're minor
maps.
attracted person.
Yeah, they got to call them maps.
And they were
now.
saying like there were gay people going, that's a letter I'm not adding on.
Yeah,
we're not putting P on the end of that.
Yeah.
That's not.
I think it's like with anybody though. I think it's, you just get radicals in everything that you're doing, right? And when you have the wrong person,
especially
to be
with
the
things
voice.
that are so divisive, you're going to get those fringe members. But we got to work on getting things a bit more normal and moderate. Just get back to being normal.
The only way we do that though is this. Right,
Yeah.
it's this conversation, right? If and I have Democrat friends that I can talk to normally, right, without screaming. I also have.
They still Democrat?
I also have the crazy liberal friends that just won't even talk to me ever
Of
again.
course,
You know
they
what I
block
mean?
you.
So they're not.
They're not really. They're left
Yeah.
wingers.
Yeah,
The liberals will actually talk to you.
Yeah.
But not.
But it's funny. It's the only way we get back into this, right? And the people that are going to see this video and see me and you on this and Brian, they're going to,
Hopefully they see
I was about to say, Brian's kind of in the
Yeah,
seat
I'm
far
pu- I'm
away,
pushed
so
out.
we might not have
he'll get
caught
it.
him.
He'll get it with the
Wide
iPhone.
angle.
I got the real good camera over there on me. I make sure it looks good.
Joe always has the good the good view.
Ridiculous. we get this?
No, you'll they'll
Yeah.
make it.
I heard there's harsh lighting.
It was made in China. I'm sure it's good.
It's got to be the best.
But it's funny, yeah. So like you have this extreme movement on kind of on all levels, right? And anything that you believe in, there's extremists in everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's hilarious, right? When you get down to it, nobody wants to have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
And for you to go against the grain, right? And, Gays Against Groomers, just saying, you're...
Which, first of all, I don't feel that anyone should be arguing with this. Like,
No.
who isn't against groomers? Well, I mean, obviously, I guess some people aren't against groomers, the groomers. But
There are a lot of people
that love groomers.
that are protecting groomers.
They
I don't
love
know whether it's
groomers.
through
Yeah,
blackmail, through their own personal preference, but it doesn't seem that even some of the materials you're speaking about.
I don't think it's so, and just playing devil's advocate here, I don't think it's just groomer per se, right? I think it's what they think you're insinuating, right, is the LGBTQIA plus movement is groomers, right? And people like, certain teachers that believe in the LGBTQIA plus movement are groomers, right? And I think that's what they really have to understand is, right, that it's not that, right?
Yeah.
We're not against that. It's the people that are forcing sexuality to minors. That's who we have a problem with.
Absolutely. And another,
yeah.
sorry to talk
No,
over
no,
you, but
go ahead.
another thing that we really wanted to address is it seems that a lot of teachers are feeling that we, or just anyone that's for parental rights,
Mm-hmm.
that we're anti-teacher. We're by no means, shape, or form, anti-teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers, they're extraordinarily important. They're with their kids every day.
Everybody that listens to this podcast or knows me as a person knows I'm pro-teacher.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
first and foremost.
Of course.
But they don't, and that's the problem, is they'll never have this conversation, right? It's the label that they see, and I hate him because of what he represents, right?
Yeah.
And not really understanding what I represent, right? And I think that's what's good about podcasts in general, and just being able to have this conversation. You can kind of get through all of that and kind of get to the bottom line on it.
No, we had a parental rights rally 2-3 weeks ago, and someone's holding the sign, parental rights now, and a woman goes and rolls down her window, "Go F yourself," and I'm like, what a weird thing.
Was that to me? Because that did happen to me. No, someone came up to me. I think I spoke about it when we had Alec Lace on. I was holding a sign so a woman said to me, "Brian, would you hold my sign?" So I said, "Yeah," and it just said parental rights. That's all I saw. So all of a sudden,
What a weird thing to get that triggered by, though.
So next thing you know, there was a bunch of people staring at me, and I saw grumbling, and then all of a sudden I was being called a fucking Nazi.
Oh yeah.
And I was like,
"Welcome to the club."
and I was like, and I actually was like, let me look at this again. I didn't,
You're
did
like,
it say,
is there a swastika on
yeah,
it?
did it
Like,
say
what is
something
it?
else?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it actually just said parental rights. So a woman, old troll-looking lady, comes up to me, points at the sign, and says to me, "Parents don't deserve rights." And the funny thing was, I was actually laughing at. I said, "I actually want to thank you for saying that."
Yeah.
And she
'Cause
looked
you're like,
at
now
me.
I'm going to hold this sign.
Well,
real proud.
that's pretty much. So I said, because that's exactly why I'm holding this sign.
Yeah.
And
If you had any doubts in the beginning, that kind of
Yeah, because at first I'm a counter protester right now because there was about 150 of them. And when she asked me to hold the sign, the cops went, "Oh, okay." And they put barricades in front of us. Now, there was only 4 or 5 of us, right? And we were counter protesters.
Yeah.
And now I'm behind a barricade. And I'm going, what did I get myself into? But that eliminated any doubt that I had.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm doing right. I'm
I
doing
could
the
have
right
2
thing.
signs, one in each hand next
Yeah,
time.
I would absolutely like that. I said when she said first of all, when they were calling me a Nazi, I was like that's really discussion.
Yeah,
right now.
they got to come up with something more clever than that.
Yeah.
It's such a blanketed. It's just everyone's a Nazi nowadays. If you don't go along with exactly what they're saying, you're a Nazi, which honestly seems kind of Nazi-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing the same thing. It's a social contagion. I'm catching.
Well, maybe that's what you come back with. You say, "I'm not a Nazi, you're a Nazi."
Yeah,
That's
I
what
know
I'm gonna
you
do
are,
next
but what
time.
am I?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just like I said. I mean, the labels just in general that we kind of give each other, and it's not. It's just that you perceive something right about that particular person or what they're saying, only because you're against that one thing, and all they see right in that particular instance that you guys are talking about is, we're there to. I guess you were there to petition the trans policy, right?
I wanted. Yeah, I was in favor of parents being notified because in New Jersey, as I believe they put I forget the number. It's
5756.
Yeah, I always get them backwards for some reason.
exactly. It's 5-7.
So yeah, it says that, like if they come in and say a kid says, I'm going to be a different gender, I'm going to wear a dress, I don't want, and they're not allowed to tell the parents.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't believe in it.
Do you think the other side though is thinking that you just hate trans people?
That's the narrative that they're pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, like I have a 8-year-old son, and if he's not saying any, like it shouldn't even be in his purview, where it is in people who are pro children being trans.
They understand what that means.
Yeah, and the only exposure he's getting to that is if he's watching TV and there's something on there. There are some cartoons now that have it. It's being pushed on them. Mm-hmm. So for example, last year we had to give permission for him to watch a movie at the end of the year, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't anything inappropriate.
It wasn't nearly as bad as the books.
No, it wasn't anything inappropriate or anything. But can he watch this movie? Yeah, okay, no problem. But they're saying if this, you can't know, because they're deciding that I shouldn't be able to know that. They're saying apparently the narrative is that we're a danger.
Yeah, we're going to beat our kids to death.
Yeah, and obviously the school system should be. I mean, the police should be involved if it's that dangerous. Mm-hmm. There's an issue going on there. And could it be worse? You think about it, because the kids are outing themselves in school. Like everybody knows. So the teachers know, the fellow students know. We've had our kids come home and, so-and-so came out as a different name, a different gender, right? I know about it. You know about it. And now if that parent really is dangerous, what's worse? Maybe it's more dangerous now, because now the whole neighborhood knows. And now that's how they're gonna find out.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the not the narrative, but that's basically what's happening, right? It's the community, right, is informing on the back end what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. And the change in that particular policy was the parents were notified once the child used a different bathroom, locker room, chose to use a different gender and things like that. All kind of
different name.
Yeah, kind of outing themselves at that point and saying this is what we want to do. The idea, I guess, from people that are, against this is saying that, well, they didn't out themselves to their parents, and it should be up to them to tell their parents on, kind of.
But there is no age limit, because
5.
that was.
I thought it was kindergarten.
Well,
kindergarten and up.
They kind of said, like, what if it's like, because when the New Jersey case was brought, and the judge said, what if a 5-year-old does this? Mm-hmm. And the guy said, the representative for the attorney general, oh, judge, come on, like, and he said, but what if it's a 5-year-old? And they wouldn't really give you an answer, because
I thought he said that it would apply for 5.
He kind of was like, that's not going to happen, but it was very like, well,
he was implying that it couldn't happen, right?
Yeah,
but they're saying, the judge was basically saying that legally it can, right?
Yeah.
It is legal under what we're pushing here, right? And
yeah, I mean, as a parent, how do you?
I kind of hate that they're calling it an outing policy, because how they're trying to make it sound is, Billy's 14 years old and talks to his guidance counselor and says that he, might like boys, but he doesn't really know. He thinks he might have a crush on his friend.
Yeah,
and that the guidance counselor is calling up and being like, go beat the crap out of your kid. He's
but did
gay.
you know anybody who's ever said to their guidance counselor, like,
maybe they do.
Maybe they do. But
I honestly think it's different now.
You think so?
I think they are comfortable with telling their guidance counselors.
Yeah,
and people in school.
But at least from what I understand, that is not what the situation is. We're talking about, he wants to start calling himself Sally, playing on the girls' swim team and using the girls' locker room.
The argument on both sides is the extremity in it, right? The extreme portion of it, right? The one, like we're talking about with the judge saying, hey, it's it could happen, right? And we're protecting them under this law by saying it could happen to a 5-year-old or kindergartner. But the other side of this is we're also pushing the other extreme and saying that, well, they're going to out, the guidance counselor is forced to tell the parents. That's not true. So the parents only get notified if they chose to make a public change, right?
Right.
So a public change being a gender, locker room, bathroom, things like that. So
Which
that's
parents
the difference.
absolutely should be involved in those decisions and should be informed. Schools should not be put in a position where they need to keep two separate records.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think the important part of, kind of circling back to it is saying that the parents will know, right? And, there are some parents that work and kind of aren't involved in their kids' school, right? And I see that personally, right? I see it. But when they go back and actually, it's happening in the community and the child is, let's say Bobby's going to the bathroom and he's going to a girl's bathroom and Sally's in there. Sally then turns around and tells one of her friends or, comes back and tells her parent, right? Whatever the relationship is, it's going to eventually play a big game of telephone and it's going to get back to that community, whether it's the parent or, relative or whatever. And that's what we're talking about here. And I think both sides of it are pushing on the extreme side of it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's common sense, right? If we enable things to happen within a certain umbrella under a legal sense, then it could happen.
Where do you know any society in history where it's worked out, where they started separating parents from children and it worked out positively?
No.
I mean, listen, my mom was a child
Marxism
of World
101.
War II.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see any examples where that works out.
Yeah.
Where you have like, okay, let's keep secrets.
There's certain instances like when we're talking about school, psychiatrists and, and any psychiatrist.
No, I just mean, I understand there are definitely small areas, but when you have like an ideology, which we have an ideology being pushed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was the New Jersey Project uncovered where it was, through research, it was since this started being socially pushed, the amount of children that identified as trans went up 4,000%.
Oh, 'cause they don't. I don't even know what trans.
But is that even realistic? Like when you think about it, like coming from the gay community.
The definition
it's
now.
they've changed trans.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's no longer like that's how I thought trans was. Oh, if you're a male and you're going to be a female, or a female, you're going to be a male.
Yeah.
Now they have the whole non-binary spectrum.
Yeah.
The
But
72 genders.
When it
and
was
I think all of them are trans, right? Am I?
No.
Not all of them? A lot of
think
them.
So. I'm not in the community, so I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't associate with the pluses.
I'm just an ally. But like when it was okay to come out, like when people just didn't have a problem coming out as gay, did you see a 4,000% increase in kids being gay?
But I think, and again, I'm not an expert at this, but what I think has changed is the definition of what constitutes a trans.
So what does constitute a trans?
I think now, I mean, before, I think a
this
person
could change by the time this podcast airs.
It might be a different definition.
So I think when we were growing up, the definition was if I wanted to transition to another gender, right, and I was in the process, whether I was taking hormone or something like that, that would be.
So couldn't it be any of those 72 genders if this is going to be a different gender? That's why I think there's so many trans.
Yeah, but now it's if I go into school tomorrow and I say, hey, I'm identifying as a girl, right, that constitutes being trans, and that's actually part of the percentage. That's the difference. It's just, however I feel, right? And since it's a protected group, I think a lot of kids that are growing up kind of feel like, oh, it's kind of cool. I can say that because my group
I can say
is
whatever I want.
Yeah.
No one's allowed to
I
make
can identify as a cat, and they are identifying as cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it firsthand, but I have talked to many people in the educational system that they say they have furries.
The furries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and the rules, evidently, what they did to make it more palatable for the teachers, and I just guess everyone in the classroom, is they can't wear the masks, the cat masks.
Oh, they can't. They can wear the
but
ears.
They can have the ears and the tails and the paws.
I can tell you, and I can confirm that that's true.
Jesus fucking.
Yeah. That is true.
But do you remember?
Literally, is it written somewhere? Because I would really like to see where that's actually.
I don't know
where
if it's
you could
actually
wear the
written, but
paws.
I know that. Yeah. So there's
this
some
was a special on HBO like at night years ago. The furries. This is
Yeah.
like,
Again, furries was
And then
something very different to me. When I heard furries, they were like meat. I had no
Yeah.
affiliation with that, but I mean like meeting out in the woods and doing something, whatever.
Yeah.
But, like,
Oh, I
this
didn't know
wasn't, like,
anything about the woods.
I lived in California for 14 years, right?
Yeah.
And
So I'm sure
So we knew
yeah.
about the fur.
yeah,
This might be a whole nother podcast right here.
so it was a so we used to go to these.
Wait, you went to like a
No,
furry thing?
no. You would go to, like, let's say I was going to San Francisco. And
Can
go
you
to, like,
focus in on Joe right now?
a
This
big-
might be
Yeah,
confession.
yeah,
time.
it's definitely focused on me.
Guys,
So no,
What
so
was the costume?
So when we went to, like a baseball game or something like that, and you were in San Francisco, there would be certain, like they would have annual, furry conventions and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you would see them walking around, but
And these were adults.
yeah, these were adults. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was it wasn't like, like they were just hanging out and like, pretending they were cats. I mean, it's a sexual thing, right?
Yeah.
So
But now they're saying
No, that's their identity.
It's elementary.
No,
Yeah.
that's their identity, though. Like I said, like you were saying, it was a sexual thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like they meowed back at you all day. And,
Yeah.
and supposedly that's what these little ear-tailed pod kids are doing, is just meowing in class and eating out of cat bowls. Now, again, I haven't seen this, but I mean, you're
So
confirming
far,
it.
I haven't heard of anybody using a kitty litter
No,
box.
I
mean,
know.
that
I heard
that
of
has
the kitty.
been.
I've heard that they're kitty
but-
litter boxes. I've never actually heard of anyone
That's
using
when I
said
started
litter box.
homeschooling. That's the. I mean, do we have
Has
to?
anyone used the litter
That could be a
box?
big
don't know.
pay raise for
Yeah.
the the custodians
I
in
can
the schools.
imagine. I mean, it seems
They
like a
work so
little bit of a
hard
help.
as it is. The
biohazard.
custodians.
Biohazard, yeah.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen like the custodians in the schools are like
They were always miserable to begin
They're-
with, and now they got to scoop
well, they're
human cat poop.
They're extremely overworked and underpaid. And I mean,
Yeah.
imagine on top of this, you go, hey, guess what? You have to clean out a litter box.
No, but like that's what I'm saying. Like, make it make sense. Because like when I first heard of this furry thing, like I laughed because of the fact that like the troll in me could see how like a 15-year-old could think it's really friggin' funny to be like, listen, if he wants that one wants to be a they them, this one wants to be a z and a them and a zer. I'm gonna be a cat, meow meow. Like
Yeah.
I could see how it'd be really funny, but like they're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And like teachers and educators and parents have to go around and literally, quote unquote, affirm them as a feline.
Yeah.
And it's like, when are you going to draw the line and be like, this is bonkers? Like, it's gone too far.
That's so
the
my
line doesn't exist anymore.
my problem across the board, right, with all of it, right, is when you don't have something that fits into a certain, when how do I phrase this without sound like a maniac?
Too late.
you already
No,
said you drove
Yeah.
past a furry
Yeah,
convention.
you were in
Yeah,
a furry
yeah.
convention, Joe.
So I think personally, you have to make sure that once you start creating all these gray areas, I feel like society falls, right? And you can't. There has to be. This has to fit into a certain silo, right? It can't just be you can do and say and be whatever you want, right? I mean, there has to be limitations to that, right?
It's very
So-
bigoted of you.
Well, it's like if I say that like, where does this end, right? If I want to be a bird, right, and I say I'm a bird, and I go up to the top of a building and I say, hey, I'm a bird,
Yeah.
If you identify it as, I think you could fly.
You got to fly.
So, I mean, someone has to. You're a murderer, right? If you don't stop it at that point, right? And you say, "Hey, I'm not."
But I
affirming
mean,
it,
at
right?
least I won't be a bigot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you just let it happen. And
I'm
yeah. Who was I to tell him he wasn't a bird?
I
Sorry,
don't
Joe.
wanna be
Fly,
a
Joe.
Nazi.
Fly.
I don't want to make light about it. I mean,
No, it is.
It's
It's a-
scary, right? But I'm just saying that like there has to be limitations to it, and we let society kind of just get crazy, right? And it's like even if you're having a child, right? So let's say you're not like us in the room, right? And you have a child, and it's a boy, right? And you're like, you know what? Let's just start the transition now. It doesn't make sense. I wanted a girl.
Well, there is a movement that people
Yeah.
aren't naming a
picked out
gender.
the pink crayon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's scary, right? It's like because anybody can have kids, right? There's no law that says, hey, you have to get this IQ test or you have to take this psych to have a kid, and it's scary, right? Because then I don't know. It's just scary to see in society stuff like this is happening with everybody just fighting the other people that are what I see is being more rational. But I'm open for the conversation and whatever it is, right? To actually talk through it, but there has to be some kind of limitation here because it's getting so far crazy. crazy.
Has Gays Against Groomers done any research on like what they think the origins of this is? Because like I'm familiar with, there was a Dr. Judith Reisman, who actually studied and exposed Kinsey, who's like the father of human sexuality, very accepted, right? She was on Phil Donahue in like the 80s and was reading from
Big name drop.
Judith Reisman.
No.
Oh, Phil Donahue.
Phil Donahue.
Oh, most people not Phil.
Vince is looking
You think
at me
Vince
like I'm
would
a
know
maniac.
who Phil Donahue is?
No.
So he was like the Joe Rogan of the 70s, but with big white hair, whatever.
He was more like the Maury Povich.
The Maury Povich,
Yeah.
right? Well, he's not going to know who Maury Povich is either.
don't know.
And he lives over here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kinsey's studies are widely accepted by what we say is academia. And it's human sexuality. And, you know, when you do those studies, it's a broad spectrum of people. Tall, fat, skinny, male, female, everything. She exposed the fact that this guy was using prisoners. And this is stuff that is, some people link his studies to what's going on today, because now the people that are pushing this today were in school in the 80s, the 90s, and now they're in charge of a lot of stuff. And it's perversion, like literally using children
Yeah. I know there were
as
studies
subjects.
with twins and everything.
Yeah,
they
I
were
mean,
doing.
it was when
Where was this?
this was Kinsey was like he's considered the father of human sexuality. So this lady who passed away not too long ago did books and studies exposing Kinsey.
Yeah.
And when she was on, the reason I brought up Phil Donahue was because he was kind of mocking her in a way where she said, okay, well, read from these tables. And the guy's talking about digitally manipulating a child. And this is in like a textbook. And Donahue was like,
What do you mean by digitally manipulating?
I mean, like giving, like children can have orgasms.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was
I thought you meant editing.
and it
books.
Yeah,
it was
me too.
disgusting.
Now I'm
right?
really appalled.
Yeah.
It's very appalling.
Yeah.
And the problem was like, so when she was on Phil, who was, you know, that generation's Oprah, he was kind of mocking her. Well, it turned out he was also on the board of the Kinsey Institute.
Oh, of course.
And this is like, and you know, where people were just like, no mainstream media would ever do a story on Judith Reisman.
Yeah.
And none of her studies were ever negated as false. They mocked her. They didn't have her on. None of it was ever negated. And the guy was a perv. So when he did a lot of his studies, some of it was like during wartime. Most of the men in the United States, like both my grandfathers were in the war. That's how it was during that time. He was in prisons, and he was doing this study, which is supposed to be a swath of the population, using rapists, pedophiles, you know, just criminals, and
The worst of the worst.
and saying, no, I used the general population, and came up with all these theories. You know, Hugh Hefner was very popular in America for obvious reasons, but he was friends with him. And, you know, he was guided by, you know, influenced by him.
You know who Hugh Hefner is?
He did. But, you know, his studies were exposed. And again, just like how you guys are mocked and anybody who speaks against it are mocked, this woman was mocked. And nothing was ever negated. Nothing was ever proven false that she said. But this goes back into where the indoctrination starts. It started somewhere. You know, I just want to, like, did Gays Against Groomers ever try to figure out, like, why is...
They've definitely done a lot of research. I know on the website they have the Radar is where they publish most of their articles and everything. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't want to be quoting the wrong names.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're
Yeah.
definitely in there. Yes.
Yeah, because it's got to come from somewhere. This didn't just, I mean, 5 years ago, this really wasn't an issue. Now, you speaking out against it for this group, you're being attacked. I mean,
I've had my kids
you've been
threatened.
threatened.
Yeah,
You've had your kid, your child. How old is your child?
4.5.
So someone thinks it's okay to threaten a 4.5-year-old child
Yeah.
of a mom. That's okay, and that's accepted. Has anybody come out from that side and say, Victoria, we're sorry.
Of course not.
We're sorry this member went over the top and
Yeah.
did this. It's not happening, right?
And I don't anticipate that ever
Yeah.
happening. Yeah.
Well,
So what's the getting back to the Gays Against Groomers? What kind of things are you guys doing to kind of help the situation? Do you reach out to different groups? Like, have you ever thought about actually reaching out to some of the groups that call you hate, right? Call you a hate group and actually have a discussion.
I had a conversation not with a group, but with an individual troll yesterday. He was posting a bunch of defamatory stuff online. And, I found him on Facebook, and I was like, listen, do you want to talk? I was like, just want to talk rather than just writing mean comments on Instagram. I was like, because whatever you think, I was like, this isn't me. I was like, just approach me.
Yeah.
And, I would like to say it went better than I thought it would. Obviously, some insults were thrown, but, they're coming from a place where they truly they're misinformed. I guess we all could be a little misinformed on certain things, but definitely was adamant that kids are not being affected by any of the transgender movement. No one's doing surgery on kids. Grooming is not real. This is all a conspiracy. Like everything we talk about this is all conspiracy.
Yeah.
And you know what? And in the troll's defense, if he truly believes it's all a conspiracy, then I guess, from his perspective, he's right. We're just a bunch of crazy people trying to fight for something that doesn't need to fought for.
So I truly think, and we kind of covered this on our last podcast when we talked about it, the media has their narrative, right, that they kind of portray. And depending on where you are either in the world, right? I mean, if you grew up in California, right, and you listen to their news, right, chances are you're left-leaning, right? And if you grow up in,
don't say Alabama.
I know.
I knew
That was the first one.
Alabama.
Yeah.
I think I may move to Alabama.
Yeah.
If they'll have me.
Let's say Florida, right, or something like that, right? You might start looking at it from a right perspective, right? But I don't. I think that's the problem, right? Is we're so far off, and we have our little thing that we watch, our little propaganda tool, right? Whether it's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, or whatever it is, they all pitch the narrative from their side, right? And I think for some reason the doing your own research thing became some crazy thing to do, right? But why not have that conversation, right? And I think personally, I'll go out and I'll have a conversation with anybody. I don't care. I'm not gonna, if they're screaming at me, I'll have the conversation. And usually at the end of the day, when we're done with that conversation, we both leave and they're like, oh, I get it.
We were just at an event recently.
Yeah.
And the lady was mocking
Yeah.
the speaker. And
Yeah.
she was trans guy who was,
Yeah.
and wouldn't let a speaker talk.
Yeah.
And fascist and Nazis.
Nazis, yeah.
And we said, like,
Everyone.
so I said, do you ever try to talk to anybody? And she
Yeah.
was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm talking to you. Like,
Yeah.
are we fighting? Am I yelling at you? Well, you're not, but... And it was like, we all walked to our cars, and I said, have a good day.
That's the problem. And I think
No open dialogue.
Yeah.
I would be open for Gays Against Groomers if you want to do this, to bring some of the people that are kind of, really going at you on certain things, to have them come in. I can reach out to them and have them in on a podcast. I think that would be good to kind of talk and
Would they have
and
that
actually
conversation?
go through it. Yeah.
This was brought up when I was, I'm big. I was on Fox News a bunch of times.
I heard.
So
It's not a propaganda tool
I
at all.
thought that's where I recognized you
Yeah.
from, was television.
definitely. But again, people are like, oh,
He
you're
does Rogaine commercials as well.
Worked very well.
no, it's the spray. You don't know about Ron Popeil. So I was only on Fox, but people were saying, oh, that's because you're a right winger. But the subject was parental rights.
Yeah.
And I never got a call from MSNBC or CNN. I would have went on there. Nobody, they don't want to talk about it, because when you watch their side of the fight, it's bigots. Then that's the narrative.
Yeah.
They're not even willing to say, why is it okay for this guy to have an opinion?
That's because it's always extremes. Like for instance, if you're against a person that kneels for the flag, you're automatically hate black people, right? And it's like no one has that conversation on why. And then you'll have the conversation, well, like my dad was not saying this is true, but let's say like my dad was a wounded vet or something like that, and standing for the flag would mean everything, right? And you see people like Brittany Griner, for instance, right? now all of a sudden she's pro-America, right? She was
Because she experienced why
Yeah.
America's
right,
great.
100%. And I think the experience, right, of experiencing different things, right, and experience in life, travel in different countries and actually seeing other countries and how they work will really be enlightening to people. And most of the people that do argue about these things haven't really stepped outside of, the United States or their city, right, and really understand what it is to be in a different country, right? And that's what's scary is they come at it from a very, being in the military, I can tell you what we saw in 2020 was a brainwashing, right? It was brainwashing, and then it was a test in socialism, right?
Yeah.
With what happened with, the whole supply chain and what was, how, all of a sudden toilet paper was disappearing and,
The chips in the car.
yeah, chicken, and all that, right?
And it was just close your business down and accept it.
100%. And it was a
Do
test.
this and accept it.
Meanwhile, Walmart and Target and all the
Amazon
big
killed it.
Amazon, right? Yeah. So, but people don't question that narrative, right? They don't go back and think, oh, well, like America would never do that to us, right? But they would.
Only
They
small.
have.
And you think about it, only small. And people say, like, if you're pro-socialism, pro-Marxism, pro-communism, why would you let a big store succeed?
Mm-hmm.
Like in China, it's the big businesses that succeed.
Yeah.
A mom and pop store doesn't have to exist.
Yeah.
And that's what they were using that model here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Close down the mom and pop store. You're a car mechanic, you're a whatever. Did I need to go to a boutique during COVID? No. But was that person hurting somebody by being open? No.
No.
But I went to Home Depot. I went to a big store.
Well, we could. I mean, and I have my own company as well, and we could have did the same thing, right? I mean, I could have did exactly what Uber did, right? So Uber Eats and everything else, right? We could have kind of, gave our product, remotely, just like everybody else did, wore the mask and did everything that they asked us to do. But that wasn't even a question. It was, no, you're shutting down. We're not even having that conversation.
My barber was threatened. They came in and they said, no, you are closing down today.
My barber as well, yeah.
And you're closing down, or you're getting hundreds of dollars in tickets every single day. But yet, like I said, I was in Home Depot the next day.
Yeah.
No.
They're trying to bring it back. You're seeing them masked up more often now, by me at least. I don't know if you guys are seeing that down here.
Yeah.
The elections are coming up. It's
Oh, of course.
November, so.
Everyone's-
It's they want someone to
we
be
gotta
able
do
to hide in the
something, right?
basement.
Yeah. New variant.
We're trying not to get political on
Oh,
the
sorry.
show.
Yeah.
But
Sorry,
I gotta
guys.
say, they need somebody to be able to hide in the basement. I'm not going to name any names, but
Yeah.
it works out much better like
Yeah.
that.
So to kind of, end this whole podcast, and I appreciate you, coming in and spending time.
Happy
This
to
is
be
great.
here.
I'm so glad you.
Yeah,
Came on.
absolutely. And and I would like to take you up on that if there ever is an occasion that you wanted someone else to come on and we can have a somewhat civil
Who gets to
chat
sit in
on both
Brian's
sides.
seat? Is it?
Yeah.
Are they going to sit in Brian's seat?
No, this is my seat.
They would probably
this is
sit
your
next to
seat.
my
me.
seat.
They would probably sit next to me.
Yeah,
You
is
can
that-
I could just push them.
You can hold them back.
No. But I think it's important, right? It's like we never have those conversations, right? And by the time we meet, right, it's already kind of crazy, right? Where, it's like they think you're a Nazi, right? And the truth is, they really think that, right?
Well, and I understand
And you
that,
could tell
that's
in their
why-
eyes,
And that's
yeah.
why I almost sympathize for their craziness, is because I know they're convinced of it. That's why I was
Yeah.
like, dude, just talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm a regular person. And, the rest of us, we're just regular people. Like, no one's hateful. No one's trying to hurt anybody. We just want what's best for children. And what's best for kids is for their parents to be involved in their lives. Like, we should be, helping family units, thrive, not break them apart.
Agreed. Well, this was American Sidebar Podcast. Have a good day.
Like a boss.